please, Mr. Hosley.
Jami, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I am honored to bring a local history perspective to today's forum and to address one of the most fundamental challenges of our time: how to rekindle the prosperity and civic spirit that made Hartford one of the richest small cities in America, a city aspirational enough to, among other things, build this lovely college. Hartford was an economic leviathan with a national reputation for industrial technology, agriculture, social reform, religion, finance, education, and of course, insurance. The power of local history is the promise of civic attachment, the quality of local consciousness and pride of place that may actually be necessary to achieving an ethical, socially cooperative, productive engagement with something bigger than oneself. An article by columnist Neil Pierce talked about soft factors like civic attachment as the root of economic development and a strong civic culture. People that care about a place, Pierce observed, spend more time and money there and are more productive and entrepreneurial. Civic attachment fosters happiness and trust, which foster teamwork, loyalty, and perseverance. What part of economic development and prosperity doesn't depend on that? So what we can do here and now to make a healthier, happier, and more enticing and sustainable Hartford region. It starts by doing more in the classroom and in our daily lives to instill a sense of place, past, and community in one another. Place-based education is a pedagogical movement modeled here at Trinity during the 1990s and early O's with Susan Pennybaker's Hartford Studies Project. The champion of this agenda in Hartford today is Professor Jeffrey Partridge and his Hartford Heritage Project at Capital Community College. In the 1990s, the Dobell administration made headlines when the Brookings Institute published his Awakening the Sleeping Giant essay, and the next year when he argued that cities like Hartford were a hidden asset for schools like Trinity. He spoke of a new academic vision for the college built around our belief that the heart of our academic strategy is our relationship to Hartford. We are proud of our connections to build to a great and historic city, he continued, and so are moving aggressively to build academic linkages to our own city and cities around the world. Sounds right to me. It's potentially a great niche. Trinity competes with schools like Amherst, Williams, Hamilton, and Middlebury. What do we have here that they don't have? An urban context and environment with a deep reservoir of talent in culture and the arts, government, insurance, medicine, and industrial technology. Also a history so multidimensional that it alone could be a platform for an undergraduate education. As place pedagogy theorist David Sobel puts it, using place as an integrating context situates students in the community, researching aspects of its history and learning about local lore, researching aspects of its local watershed, conducting community health surveys, and developing exhibits for a local museum. Sobel speaks of how a pedagogy of place recontextualizes education locally, making it a preparation for citizenship, a concept worth underscoring. And he concludes that place as an integrating context improves student achievement, critical thinking, enthusiasm, and engagement in learning. The writings of Wendell Berry have long inspired me. No one speaks to the power of place with greater clarity and expression. Berry observes that if the word community is to mean or amount to anything, it must refer to a place. He further asserts that the vitality of a local economy is strikingly related to the vitality of local community, and that when a community loses its memory, its members no longer know one another, no longer trust one another, and can hardly avoid harming one another. The late Ralph Elliott, a Hartford attorney and the chair of the U.S. Constitution's Bicentennial Committee, wrote an article for the New York Times titled, "It's Time to Teach Connecticut History Again." There he described Connecticut as a readily comprehensible microcosm of the United States, an ideal platform to teach how the nation was formed, grew, suffered, and prospered. How much more vividly the lessons of our country's past would come alive, he continued, if they could be related to people and places within easy access of our students. Douglas Putnam's famous Bowling Alone, the Collapse and Revival of American Community, seems more prophetic now than it did 17 years ago. He talked about how public trust in government has declined, how Americans have dropped out of political involvement in droves, how all forms of family togetherness are less common, that long-term trends in philanthropy are down, and about reciprocity, the sense that I'll do this for you now without expecting anything immediately in return, confident that down the road you or someone else will return the favor. He talks about how place-based communities have been supplanted by interest-based communities, and how Gen Xers and millennials are less likely to trust people outside their generational cohort than in past generations. He documented a decline in civic commitment on the part of business leaders and noted that citizens in states characterized by low levels of social capital are readier for a fight. Sound familiar? It's kind of grim. Among many recommendations, Putnam advocated for improving civics education, not just how a bill becomes a law, but how to participate effectively in the public life of our communities. The good news is that the necessary revolution is already quietly underway in the rising tide of what I call the locophilia movement. Eat local, shop local, invest local, and by all means, teach and learn local. The point is, we here in Hartford are sitting on a gold mine, not just in the astonishing $billion-plus invested in cultural assets, but in all forms of distinctiveness in localisms that are inherent to a place that has been evolving for almost 400 years. If I lived 10 lifetimes, I could never get to the bottom of all the teachable content underfoot here. This may be overkill, and we surely need to delve deeper into the diverse cultural groups who have contributed along Hartford's journey. But consider this. On November 10th and 11th, the Wadsworth Athenaeum is hosting a 2-day symposium featuring 15 lectures by scholars from as far away as London, all about Hartford born, raised, and buried J.P. Morgan. It's not just famous people like the Colts and Frederick Law Olmsted and Mark Twain and Harriet Beecher Stowe. It's the layers and layers of interwoven texts and subtexts, triumphs and tragedies, so much, so close, a cornucopia of teachable experiences. It is possible, Wendell Berry writes, to live in and study the same place decade after decade and find it ceaselessly exceeds comprehension. This has been my experience exactly, and it is my hope for our future that we can do more to make sense of place by capitalizing on the gifts we have. We need a magnet school with a place-based curriculum. We need to insert local learning into the classroom beginning in the 4th grade, doubling back in the 8th, and culminating in senior projects for the highly motivated. Preservation values should overarch city planning. We need to ramp up inter-district programs where city and suburban students team up to drill down into the mountain of content here. And finally, we need to start talking about how to kickstart visitation and tourism, an economic sector with huge untapped potential. This will sustain the treasures we love and remind visitors and residents that thanks to our culture and heritage, this place is already major league, already something to know, love, and cherish. And oh, there we go. That was the city's program, Trinity, freshman group. I always love going on tour with the students, and there we were at the Jack Doherty. I thought he was still living. Wait a second. What's going on there? No. Anyway, there we were in Old North Cemetery in the north end of Hartford. An extraordinary place that I won't embarrass. Well, let me ask, how many people have ever set foot in Old North Cemetery? That's good. It's really, really great. And this is the thing I do. It's a Facebook site, Historic Hartford, and well, it's just endlessly joyful. Thank you.
Thank you.